What's up,
These are
YouTube?
the top headlines relating to the Russian invasion of Ukraine as of November 10th, 2024. A recent drone attack targeted the Alexein chemical plant in Russia's Tula region, sparking a fire that forced the plant to cease operations and prompted an evacuation of all staff. According to a source in Ukraine's State Security Service, drones from the SBU and Special Operations Forces struck the site multiple times, leading to explosions that ignited chemicals within the facility. The incident reportedly escalated, with additional blasts resulting from the drone strikes. The SBU detailed that a minimum of 13 drones hit the plant throughout the night, releasing acidic substances that produce toxic orange smoke, especially around the gunpowder production area. In addition to the chemical plant, the attack also affected nearby infrastructure, causing damage to the Alexein combined heat and power plant, including a compromised 110 kV power transmission line. The strike occurred overnight between the 8th and the 9th and targeted a significant part of Russia's defense manufacturing network. The Alexein chemical plant, which is a facility under the state-owned Rostec Corporation, is known for producing ammunition, gunpowder, and various materials essential to the Russian defense industry. In a breakthrough operation led by Ukraine's main intelligence agency, HUR, the Russian flotilla stationed in the Caspian Sea faced a significant setback. Sources from HUR, speaking to Interfax Ukraine, confirmed that kamikaze drones were deployed in a targeted strike on November 6th. This mission achieved an unprecedented reach, with the drones covering approximately 1,500 kilometers from Ukraine's border to their targets in Kaspisk, which is located in Russia's Republic of Dagestan. The attack reportedly damaged multiple assets, including the missile ship Tatarstan and Dagestan, and inflicted probable damage on smaller missile ships from Project 21631. The facility struck in Kaspisk also hosts coastal units, including Marines who had previously been involved in missile attacks on Ukraine and in ground combat operations in Kherson and Zaporizhia. The nearby Makhachkala airport was also forced to suspend its operations. Russian forces have begun deploying Shahed 136 kamikaze drones equipped with a newly developed thermobaric warhead. This discovery was highlighted in a video from the Telegram channel Operational Armed Forces of Ukraine, which showcased a drone that had been found intact in an open field after being downed or forced to land via electronic warfare. Upon inspection, a distinctive 50-kilogram thermobaric warhead labeled TBBCH-50M was found installed on the drone. Russian sources indicate that the rollout of these thermobaric warheads began in April 2024, with drones marked by the serial prefix Y. This edition is the fourth warhead type seen on Russian Geranium-2 or Shahed 136 drones. Russian forces appear to be testing various payloads to identify the most effective for widespread use, with different warheads distributed across drone series. Notably, the K and M series drones carry a 50-kilogram Iranian high-explosive warhead, while drones with serial numbers K and KB are equipped with Russian-made 52-kilogram BST-52 thermobaric or 50-kilogram BSF-50 high-explosive warheads. The Y series of drones have been fitted with both types of warheads. Thermobaric warheads like the TBBCH-50 generate an intense fire cloud reaching temperatures of 2,000 to 2,600 degrees Celsius, covering the blast radius as a shockwave propels a thermobaric mixture that reacts with air, causing widespread incineration. Reports suggest that the Russians are increasingly favoring these warheads, as shown by recent findings on downed drones. In addition to warhead modifications, the Shahed drones have reportedly undergone enhancements to improve fuel efficiency, boosting their operational range by an additional 140 kilometers. This suggests an ongoing effort by Russian forces to enhance the effectiveness of the drones. There's also a report this week about the extensive use of Russian decoys during the Shahed attacks. Now there are, as far as I understand, substantially more decoys used in every attack. The Armed Forces of Ukraine extended their basic military training program from 1 month to 1.5 months, responding to the evolving demands of frontline combat. Major General Ihor Palyunuk, who leads the main directorate of doctrine and training within the General Staff, announced the change, which was sanctioned by the Commander-in-Chief. The pilot program, which was developed by the Main Doctrine and Training Department, is underway at 4 military training centers and involves around 500 recruits. The extension is part of the Saving the Lives of Service Members initiative, focused on enhancing the readiness and survival skills of Ukrainian troops. As part of the program, training in firearms, pre-medical skills, and a range of additional introductory courses has been expanded. The shift aims to address the practical needs of military units engaged in frontline operations. The revamped program adds 78 new hours of training, with significant increases in key areas. Firearms training, for instance, has grown by 33 hours, raising the number of practice exercises from 23 to 45 variations. Recruits will also receive more comprehensive training in tactical operations, unmanned aerial vehicle, and electronic warfare strategies, as well as military navigation and the application of combat technology, collective weapons use, and other skills. So now that we've taken a look at Ukrainian training programs, let's see what the Russians are up to. Russia's sole tank military school, the Kazan Higher Military Tank Command School, has begun training crews to operate tanks fitted with heavy anti-drone superstructures known as turtle tanks or shed tanks. This adaptation has emerged in response to lessons from the invasion, where the prevalence of attack drones has spurred demand for enhanced armor on frontline vehicles. These superstructures, usually made from improvised materials, are intended to shield tanks from drone strikes but significantly limit their visibility and firing capacity. The Kazan School has incorporated these modified tanks, particularly the T-72B3 model, into its training regimen, where cadets practice maneuvering and coordinating with units while driving the altered vehicles. Russian military reports claim that such a modified tank withstood attacks from up to 100 FPV drones, although the claim remains unverified. The tanks, sometimes called sheds, often include makeshift coverings crafted from scrap metal and are mounted with various anti-drone defenses, including steel sheets, netting, mine-clearing attachments, and electronic jammers. These reinforced tanks are generally employed in high-risk frontal assaults, acting as icebreakers for other armored vehicles following behind. Sacrificing their firing ability and flexibility, they are designed to absorb enemy fire and create paths through minefields. The tactic prioritizes defense and durability over combat functionality, aligning with Russian assault strategies that utilize continuous advances towards enemy positions. Also, the Kremlin has reportedly issued a 20-page manual to Russian soldiers outlining procedures for creating and maintaining mass graves. The manual, titled Civil Defense: Urgent Burials of Corpses in Wartime, includes precise calculations for manpower and equipment needed to bury large numbers of casualties. Detailed diagrams in the guide show how to arrange bodies in mass graves, stacked in body bags. Russia's military losses have been steep throughout 2024, with Western intelligence estimating that up to 680,000 soldiers have been killed or wounded in combat. Russian tactics such as swarm infantry or meat assaults, as they're sometimes called, a strategy that relies on continuous frontal attacks to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses by sheer numbers, have contributed to the high casualty rates. The manual's instructions indicate that burying 100 bodies in a mass grave requires an estimated 368.5 man-hours and specifies equipment lists to support large-scale burials. The updated manual appears to be an expanded version of a guide initially published in 2021. According to recent reports from the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, Russian operatives may be responsible for sending flammable packages via cargo planes in Europe, with indications that similar operations could be planned for North America. Citing undisclosed Western security officials, these reports suggest that Russian intelligence has been orchestrating acts of sabotage across Europe in retaliation for Western support of Ukraine. Intelligence agencies throughout Europe have issued warnings about potential Russian planned attacks. The incidents in question reportedly began in July when several incendiary packages were sent to locations in Germany and the UK, sparking fires that could have caused catastrophic outcomes had the fires ignited mid-flight. An investigation revealed that those behind the incendiary parcels also sent non-flammable packages to the US and Canada, hinting at possible test runs ahead of further sabotage attempts. One specific case involved a parcel that ignited in a DHL hub in Leipzig, Germany. The package shipped from Lithuania was labeled for delivery to a non-existent address in Birmingham. British counterterrorism officials are examining whether Russian agents planted an incendiary device inside the parcel that later ignited at a warehouse near Birmingham. Polish investigators are also looking into the possibility that the incident was part of a coordinated plot. Russian media sources and aviation bloggers, including fighter bomber and Voyeva Vashayat, recently reported an additional loss of a K-52 attack helicopter. You guys know I always update you about these. According to these sources, the incident resulted in the death of the helicopter's commander, while the co-pilot, who served as the weapon systems operator, survived. Although additional details haven't been disclosed, it is believed that the co-pilot escaped using the helicopter's ejection system. According to open source information, this puts the total number of Ka-52 helicopters lost during the Russian invasion of Ukraine at over 60. Up next, we have economy and aid. The Biden administration is moving to fully utilize all remaining funds for military assistance to Ukraine by January 20th, 2025, as reported by Politico, which cites two officials within the administration. This timing aligns with the upcoming inauguration of Donald Trump, who won the U.S. presidential election and has openly expressed intentions to significantly reduce or end U.S. military support for Ukraine. As of the fiscal year's close on September 30th, the administration had over $6 billion available for Ukraine's defense. This includes $4.3 billion for drawing on existing U.S. military stockpiles and $2.1 billion designated for contracting weapons production within the U.S. The White House aims to expedite the allocation of these funds to ensure Ukraine can withstand ongoing Russian assaults, despite the challenges in transferring U.S. allocated weaponry, which typically takes several months to complete. Politico sources highlight the added complication of dwindling stockpiles in U.S. military reserves, where restocking, covered by the allocated $6 billion, may face delays. As part of that initiative, the Pentagon is set to send over 500 interceptor missiles to Ukraine to support the Patriot and NASAMS air defense systems, according to a senior administration official. This delivery aims to replenish Ukraine's depleted air defense stocks, which are essential for protecting urban areas and critical infrastructure amid intensified Russian missile and drone attacks. U.S. officials anticipate that these interceptors will meet Ukraine's air defense requirements for the rest of this year. And finally, the Biden administration has lifted a long-standing restriction allowing U.S. military contractors to deploy to Ukraine for the maintenance and repair of American-provided weaponry. These contractors will focus on complex systems like F-16 fighter jets and Patriot air defense systems stationed far from combat zones to ensure their safety. Their role is to facilitate quicker repairs on site, enabling U.S.-supplied equipment to return to service on the front line faster. Until now, the Ukrainian military managed most repairs independently within Ukraine, but more intricate or significantly damaged systems had to be sent to NATO countries like Poland and Romania. The policy change, approved just before the U.S. election, grants the Pentagon authority to award contracts directly to U.S. firms for work in Ukraine, a shift from previous security-related rejections of similar proposals. According to defense officials, the decision follows a thorough risk assessment and coordination with relevant agencies in the U.S. Contractors bidding for these contracts are required to develop a comprehensive plan to ensure the safety of personnel. Each contractor will bear responsibility for their employees' security and must integrate a risk reduction strategy into their proposals. Australia is set to deliver 14 high-speed rigid-hull boats to Ukraine to bolster its coastal and maritime defenses. The military aid package, valued at $14 million is part of Australia's continued commitment to supporting Ukraine. It builds on previous support, including a selection of Sentinel 830R RHIBs, or rigid-hull inflatable boats, announced as part of another $100 million assistance package previously. The Sentinel 830R, produced by Sentinel Boats, is versatile for use in marine and riverine environments, providing speed and agility that are essential for defensive maneuvers and patrols. I couldn't find any reports about what model of these rigid-hull boats are being sent to Ukraine, though. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has confirmed that the first NASAMS air defense system ordered by Canada is en route to Ukraine and is expected to arrive by the end of the year. The shipment marks a long-anticipated step in Canada's military support, as Ottawa initially announced plans to fund the NASAMS system in January of 2023. Under the arrangement, Canada fully covered the costs, with the U.S. handling the contract logistics for the transfer to Ukraine. In their recent conversation, Zelensky and Trudeau also discussed broader strategic cooperation, including Ukraine's peace formula and the Victory Plan, which Zelensky presented to Trudeau last week. The two leaders also reviewed plans for a second global peace summit aiming to expand international participation, and they addressed the ongoing defense support and battlefield developments, notably North Korea's involvement. And I should probably mention also that the Europeans and the U.S. have also discussed this with Ukraine, and they have said they're preparing a united or multilateral response. I still haven't seen any concrete actions being taken, so I'm kind of skipping that story. But as soon as they stop saying they're going to do something and actually do it, you'll hear it from me first. Ukraine is set to receive a $1.37 billion grant from the World Bank to support social and humanitarian programs under the Peace in Ukraine project, as confirmed by the Ministry of Finance. The initiative channels financial support to Ukraine's state budget, specifically covering the social and humanitarian expenses that are not tied to defense or security. Since the onset of the full-scale invasion, the project has provided around $30 billion in budgetary support for Ukraine. The funds are expected to be dispersed into Ukraine's state budget in the coming days and are aimed at partially covering essential social and humanitarian costs. Following revelations from foreign think tanks, including Ukraine's Center for Defense Reforms, regarding Taiwanese machine tool exports to Russia in violation of international sanctions, Taiwan has implemented a strict export control to halt the shipments. This response from Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs came after the publication of the report Bring to Bear, Taiwan's critical imports to Russia, which highlighted that machine tools with potential dual use for Russian military applications were still reaching Russia despite sanctions. The ministry confirmed that since March, 77 machine tool-related HS codes were added to the export control list, effectively reducing Taiwan's machine tool exports to Russia to zero. Taiwan's export control measures also involve intensified penalties, with first-time violations for exports to Russia and Belarus now carrying fines exceeding 1 million new Taiwan dollars, a 15-fold increase from previous penalties. The Taiwanese government has actively engaged with its manufacturing sector, emphasizing the importance of due diligence in ensuring goods do not end up supporting Russia's military efforts. As part of the campaign, the ministry held 19 seminars this year, with some participation from the American Institute in Taiwan, to educate industry representatives on international export control trends. Reports do suggest that Russia continues to acquire Taiwanese components for its defense sector through intermediary countries, especially China, enabling its access to machine tools, semiconductors, and microelectronics essential to their defense industry. Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs has pledged to monitor international developments and adjust their export controls as needed to counter these evasive practices. The UK has implemented a sweeping new round of sanctions against Russia, marking its largest sanctions package in the last 18 months. The measures announced on the UK government's website target 56 individuals and entities associated with Russia's military-industrial complex and Kremlin-backed mercenary groups operating in Africa. These sanctions extend beyond Russia, imposing more sanctions on companies in China, Turkey, and Central Asia that supply goods essential for Russia's war effort. Key targets include 3 Kremlin-affiliated private mercenary groups, notably the African Corps, as well as 11 individuals connected to Russian pro-government officials. The sanctions accuse these groups and individuals of destabilizing peace and security in countries such as Libya, Mali, and the Central African Republic, as well as engaging in significant human rights abuses across Africa. The UK has also sanctioned Denis Sergeyev, an agent of Russia's main intelligence directorate who was involved in the 2018 Novichok poisoning of Sergei Skripal and his daughter in Salisbury. Sergeyev now faces an asset freeze, cooperation ban, and travel prohibition to the UK. Despite Putin's claim to balance guns and butter in the Russian economy, Russia faces mounting issues with consumer inflation, particularly in the price of staples like butter. The cost of butter in Russia has surged by 26% since December, with some brands seeing an even sharper increase. Brest-Litovsk butter, for example, is now 34% more expensive in Moscow than at the start of the year. The situation echoes last year's spike in egg prices, which prompted economists on Russia's MMI Telegram channel to draw comparisons and warn of similar challenges. Last week, Russia turned to Turkish dairy suppliers to address the growing demand, importing an additional 20-ton shipment of Turkish butter. With domestic production strained by rising inflation and supply chain shifts, 1/4 of Russia's butter now comes from abroad. Traditional sources like New Zealand and Latin America ceased their shipments after Russia's invasion of Ukraine due to sanctions and logistical barriers. This void has since been filled by countries like Belarus, India, Iran, and now Turkey, which produces butter primarily in its Marmara, Aegean, and Central Anatolian regions. Compounding the issue, Russia's war-driven economy has intensified demand for cream, as rising cheese and ice cream production competes with butter for the same key ingredient. The Russian government recently met with domestic dairy producers to establish better tracking and management of butter output to stabilize prices. In a parallel development, thefts of butter from supermarkets have reportedly increased. Retailers, in response, have resorted to placing individual blocks of butter in plastic security containers to deter shoplifters. So this I report, I think each time I hear the position shift. So I think last time we heard about that there was a deal on the table that Europe was talking about. So now, despite ongoing discussions, there is currently no deal in place between Europe and Azerbaijan to ensure gas flows through Ukraine after the existing transit contract with Russia expires at the end of 2024, according to the CEO of Naftogaz, Alexei Chernyshov. Speaking at the Kyiv International Economic Forum, he confirmed that Ukraine is preparing for a complete halt in gas transit and that Ukraine's been clear about its position not to renew the agreement. Although European energy companies from Hungary and Slovakia were reportedly nearing a deal to secure about 14 billion cubic meters of gas per year from Azerbaijan, Slovak gas importer SPP recently contradicted the claims, stating that the negotiations are far from final. The expiration of Ukraine's 2019 gas agreement with Gazprom poses significant challenges for several European nations that remain reliant on Russian gas. Slovakia, Austria, and Hungary are among the most dependent, with Slovakia receiving 89% of its gas, Austria 97%, and Hungary 47% from Russia in 2023. The looming cutoff of Ukrainian transit routes could amplify calls from these nations to secure alternative supplies. Hungary has already indicated its intent to increase imports from Gazprom. Azerbaijan, which delivered around 12 billion cubic meters of gas to Europe last year, is aiming to increase this to 20 billion cubic meters by 2030 in a partnership with the EU. However, in the short term, Azerbaijan has limited capacity to meet this additional demand, instead relying on imports from Russia and Turkmenistan. According to Sergei Makagon, the former CEO of Ukraine's gas transmission system operator, a potential arrangement might involve rebranded Russian gas being transported as Azeri gas. So at least from the Ukrainian side, while some Ukrainian officials continue to explore the possibility of Azeri gas transit through Ukraine, no viable alternative model is currently in place, and any solution remains uncertain as the contract deadline approaches. Last up this week, we have international relations. Elon Musk recently participated in a phone call between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, according to Axios, citing insider sources. During the approximately 25-minute conversation, Zelensky congratulated Trump on his election victory, while Trump expressed support for Ukraine, although he refrained from providing specifics. Musk also affirmed his ongoing commitment to supporting Ukraine through his Starlink satellite network, a resource Ukraine has relied on for secure communications. Axios noted that Musk's involvement highlights his growing influence as Trump prepares to assume office. Zelensky claimed the call left him feeling cautiously optimistic and is part of an ongoing dialogue that started since before the election. In Moldova's recent runoff election, incumbent President Maya Sandu secured a victory over her pro-Russian opponent Alexander Stoyanoglu, according to preliminary results. With nearly all votes counted, Sandu holds a 9-point lead, receiving approximately 54% of the vote compared to her opponent's 45%, as reported by the Moldovan Election Commission. In a message posted on Twitter, Sandu expressed gratitude to Moldovans, celebrating what she described as a triumph for unity, democracy, and commitment to a dignified future. Sandu, a strong advocate for Moldova's integration into the European Union, initially fell short of a majority in the first round of voting on October 20th, which led to the November 3rd runoff. The election is a critical choice for Moldova between closer alignment with the EU and Russian influence. Alongside the election, a close vote on an EU accession referendum added to the tension, with allegations of interference and voter manipulation surfacing. Sandu and EU officials have pointed to possible election interference, particularly around efforts by fugitive oligarch Ilhan Shor, who is accused of funneling around $39 million into propaganda efforts aimed at swaying voters. Reports of organized voter transport, allegedly involving flights and bus trips from Russia and other countries, have further fueled concerns about external influence. In response, Sandu urged citizens to vote to uphold Moldova's independence and its pro-European aspirations. And that referendum really did squeak by, but the Moldovans voted for further European integration in the referendum. Venezuela and Russia solidified their alliance by signing a series of agreements on intelligence sharing, counter-espionage, and energy cooperation during a visit by Russian Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Chernyshenko to Caracas. During the discussions, Chernyshenko assured Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez of Russia's readiness to supply Venezuela's military with advanced weapons and equipment. The two nations also committed to collaborating on drone technology and petroleum exploration. At a subsequent ceremony, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro emphasized that the 17 agreements would cement Venezuela-Russia relations through 2030 and beyond. The agreements are part of Moscow's steadfast support for Maduro, who was declared the winner in Venezuela's recent highly contested presidential election of July 28th. Despite opposition-backed claims that Edmundo González Urrutia won the election based on detailed results released by the opposition, Venezuelan authorities align with Maduro and have not provided an official vote breakdown. Venezuela's alignment with Russia traces back to Hugo Chavez, who fostered close ties with Moscow as part of his anti-US socialist agenda from 1999 until his death in 2013. The relationship has continued under Maduro, who has publicly supported Russia's actions in Ukraine. Venezuela, home to the world's largest proven oil reserves, once produced over 3 million barrels of oil per day. However, production has dropped significantly to about 1 million barrels per day due to years of economic mismanagement and stringent international sanctions, severely impacting the country's primary source of foreign income. And my last news item this week: military operations in Ukraine have placed approximately 600 animal species and 750 plant and fungal species, some listed in the Red Book of Endangered Species, at severe risk, according to Ukraine's Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources, Svitlana Hrinchuk. In a recent statement to Interfax Ukraine, Hrinchuk revealed that over 800 nature reserve sites covering 0.9 million hectares have suffered damage, with more than 500 areas, including 2 biosphere reserves, 8 nature reserves, and 10 national parks, now under occupation. The scale of environmental harm is vast, affecting habitats essential to biodiversity and unique ecosystems. 2.9 million hectares of Emerald Network sites spanning 160 territories and 17 internationally significant wetlands are under serious threat of destruction. Hrinchuk stressed that assessing the full extent of ecological damage and identifying restoration needs will require extensive surveys, which can only proceed after mine clearance, a process experts believe may take decades. While some natural recovery will occur, targeted restoration plans will be necessary to rehabilitate certain vulnerable territories and species, according to the minister. And that wraps up the weekly news summary from Tochnyi. We'll now move to the next segment.
Hello guys, as always, I will now present the most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. We start with the 200 million euros in additional humanitarian assistance, which were announced by Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock on Monday during her visit to Ukraine. I believe it was her 8th visit already. The humanitarian aid is to be used for emergency relief measures for the Ukrainian population. With these funds, Ukrainians, for example, can be provided with essentials such as blankets or warm winter coats to combat the icy temperatures, or also receive heating oil or firewood. The Special Training Command has announced on Tuesday that the German Luftwaffe, so the German Air Force, has completed the 4th training of Ukrainian soldiers on the US-made Patriot air defense system. The training started in August and, according to a statement from a Luftwaffe spokesperson to me, was not tied to the delivery of equipment. The trained Ukrainian personnel can, for example, be deployed on a rotating basis as turning crews or in shifts, which will be a great help for the very few Patriot crews who are already on duty in Ukraine. And yeah, that's what was already in my segment. Very short one this week. Hopefully a much longer one next week. Back to you, Joseph.